Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool review for you from the brand BOLDR Supply Company. Now, of course, a little bit about BOLDR. They're based out of Singapore and Malaysia. They manufacture watches and watch gear that's super tough, stylish yet functional, and always ready for adventure. Now, this particular type of watch is a classic field watch. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for that classic field watch. You're going to want that modest vintage style size. You're going to want Arabic numerals, typically a 12 and 24-hour scale, and normally you'd find it either in a black or cream dial option. So although I'd say this falls under the more classical category of a field watch, it definitely does employ some more modern features to include its color palette. Now, this particular model is the Venture, and it was previously a quartz model that is now equipped with an automatic movement. The retail price for these is $299 direct, but you can actually get them for $249 if you catch them on the pre-order, and depending on when you watch this video, we'll let you know if you still had enough time to catch it. Now, the case size is right there, super comparable to the Hamilton Khaki mechanical that you see on the right hand side there, just at 38 millimeters, but it does also carry over a lot of design cues from its big brother there, the BOLDR Expedition. And the blues are actually pretty well matched. I might even say maybe even perfectly. Of course, lighting does affect that a bit, but just if you guys are wondering if how well that blue rubber strap from the Expedition goes with the Venture, you can see there that it goes very perfectly. You can also see that common design language with that 4 o'clock crown. Definitely similar there. You have the angular bevels all over the thing. This particular watch is actually made out of titanium, so it's not the steel case. You can see it's a little bit darker in tone in comparison to the steel watches that are on its flanks. Now, guys, I'm really excited about this one. I'm going to get into some detail here. Hopefully I won't ramble on too long, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed just little peek and comparison so you guys can kind of get an idea here. I'd say if I could summarize this whole review in a picture, it would be this. You got your classic, very, very basic field watch on one side, and then you have the ultra hyper capable adventure watch on the other side, and somewhere in the middle you will find the BOLDR Venture. So with that said, let's go ahead, pick these guys up and take a closer look. Okay, so let's first go ahead and compare big brother and baby brother. Now, as you guys can see, very beautiful, similar blue tones, but the way that the dial space, of course, is taken up is quite different. As you can see here on the Venture, it's going to be a lot more of an open dial layout and a lot less cluttered because of the lack of the inner rotating bezel and whatnot. Also, you can see that I'd say the bevels even render a bit sharper, and that might just be a trick because of the contrast that the titanium is giving you with that darker shade, but the angles do look a bit sharper on the Venture case. Really beautiful though, and this piece definitely surprised me as far as the way the size felt. It actually was much smaller in person than I was expecting it to be, and the same went for here. Although it's a 38 and I've worn many 38s, it's this really, really short lug to lug, which is only about 14 millimeters essentially. I'm sorry, 44 millimeters lug to lug, 14 millimeters thick, which it looks much thinner. I mean, if you look at the way they did this mid case with that high bevel right there, it just visually cuts the weight down. And then, of course, you have the use of the material titanium, which is physically cutting the weight down. Also, you have the nice compartmentalized pieces here. You can see a little protrusion from both the front and the back side there with the bezel, and then the case back, and then you have this nice flat line here. You have this beautiful chamfer bevel, goes all the way around. signed crown. Really, really nice. Of course, this is matte blasted titanium all the way around. The crystal is a flat sapphire with inner AR coating. The case back is actually stainless steel and embossed. We'll go ahead and one of the nice things about this particular model and the way that they shaped these lugs are that they do angle downwards, so you can get a very easy run through with the strap. And this is quite a thick strap, as you guys can see. This is a real heavy duty NATO. This has been modified by me. I did shorten it because it was right in kind of the opposite of a sweet spot. It was just too short for me to retuck in the access length of the tail, but too long for me to just let hang out. So you guys will notice that once I get it on the wrist. But this is a really beautifully done little artwork there on the case back, nicely etched. It does, on the site, does say stainless steel, which is a bit surprising. Typically, you know, I would think that they would have used the titanium because that is a little bit better as far as on your skin being more hypoallergenic and whatnot. But you know, maybe from manufacturing purposes, the steel made sense, or maybe it is just a typo. Who knows? I guess one of you will chime in and quickly correct me as the internet police. Now, the crown, of course, is quite comparable. Just so we can get a little angle on this, you guys can see definitely in the same tone. You can see those same types of lines definitely carrying over. Really beautiful. And then you can also see that this blue is also quite a nice match if you do decide to throw it on a rubber strap. I'd say the BOLDR rubber strap is very, very nice. It can be a little bit sticky at first with these keepers, but it actually does loosen up over time, which is really, really nice. And it's already super soft out of the box. Now, the dial is a beautiful matte dial there, matte blue. It's no date involved. You're going to have the printed indices and the satin hands there, which are going to catch the light nicely, which is going to give you some really, really nice clarity and real contrast when you're looking at it, keeping it super legible. We do have 200 meters of water resistance, which is insanely good, especially for a field watch. You know, this thing is really meant to be worn on the land, but the fact that it's overbuilt enough to be 200 meters water resistant is just a huge, huge bonus, and just makes me that, plus the use of titanium, plus the use of a really nice, tough Seiko movement. I mean, it's really hard to beat. This actually is using the Seiko Instruments NH35A. And then as far as the lug width, it is 20 millimeters, so it does fit the other straps, as I mentioned before. And you know what? Let's go ahead and look at the real archetype for field watches. You can see very, very similar when it comes to just their overall proportions and the dial layout there, guys. Of course, this is going to be a little bit thinner, but it's due to the fact that there's no rotor in there because it's all manual winding. It has the drill lugs, matte case, very legible, very simple, bare bones setup there. But this is going to be more of a dedicated field watch where it's not very water resistant at all. It looks like just 5 actually, let's see what it says on the back here as far as the water resistance. I want to say it's only about 50 meters, if that. It doesn't have a screw down crown, 5 bar, yeah, so just about 50 meters there. So this one isn't going to be like super end all be all, and that's why it was on the other side, right? It's not trying to be the every watch, it's just trying to be just a field watch, and it does a great job at it. And it's the fact that they're still in production today and quite popular shows that they really have quite a formula that's working for them. But I think when you add to that formula some exotic materials and whatnot, and you can also notice too, the way that the lugs are actually really shrinks the case down more. Although these are more pronounced lugs that are quite wide, the longer lugs here are one of the reasons why these just don't look really great on straps. I'd say on a two-piece strap, I should say. Here, this will be fine on a two-piece strap. I personally have grown to appreciate it more on the NATO style strap, just because what it does is it adds a little bit, it elongates when you have this hardware, and the way that the strap looks, especially being a non-tapering strap like this, I think helps with the way the proportions look to make it look a little bit bigger, because I do have a slightly larger sized wrist at 7¼ inches. So, but all in all, you can see that they're quite comparable as far as the layout with the 24-hour scale and the 12-hour scale. They're very simple, very bare bones. Even the hand shape, that kind of syringe look, is also quite similar as well. One thing I also will mention in regards to straps is that this strap from the actual original Expedition fits this watch really, really well. So I can give you a little view of what you think this might look like. The thing I really like about this strap combination is it just gives it a really fun vibe. I don't know if you guys have ever been to like Disneyland before here in California, but they have this place called Galaxy's Edge, and to me this has a real almost Star Wars vibe to it with this strap, which I think is really cool. Also could be a little bit motorsports oriented with this type of strap, you know, with the leather padding and the stitching there, and the really solid construction for the rings. This actually fits me really well. It didn't fit me as well here because the lug distance made it a little bit tricky for me to find my sweet spot with these holes, because they're pretty hit or miss. It's not like you have here, you can see the closely knit holes, closer holes, so you're going to get a little bit of, you can dial in a little bit more. Here you're pretty much going to be in, I felt like I was in between the wrong size when it was with that watch. Here though, this thing fit perfectly, but I did believe that honestly it made the watch look a lot smaller to wear it on a two-piece strap, because the visual weight was just being spread a little bit differently and slimmed down. But I will mention that it does fit and it does look quite good. For me, it was a little bit off as far as the size went and the scale on my wrist as far as proportions. But one more thing to mention, really cool, different packaging that this actually arrived in. A nice little mini slip here. So basically you have the watch head in here, and then you can have basically the strap and whatnot hanging out. Then you have all the cards associated inside as well. Really cool looking little guy here, which is nice. So, and you can see also quite supple inside. So I thought that was actually really interesting that they did this a single, because so many brands are doing like these big old watch rolls that they'll just, you know, throw into a box. And it's actually pretty refreshing to see something a little bit more minimalist, but still executed to quite a high level. And then it does have the BOLDR branding there as well. So let's actually go ahead and move into some loom shots. And what I'll do is I'll actually keep these in frame for that, so you guys can get a nice idea, just comparable how this loom is. The loom actually on the Venture, if I didn't mention, is actually a Japanese super loom. It's not Swiss super luminova like you'll find on the Expedition, but I think you'll be quite surprised by how good it is. So let's go ahead and get that. All right, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, the loom is actually pretty excellent. I'm actually really curious to know where they sourced this Japanese loom. I don't know if maybe they got it from Orient, and where they get it from, I think this is a Natomo Luminova, or maybe even Lumabrite from Seiko, who knows, or maybe it's just some cool underground one that I haven't seen before. You can see on the left hand side there, you're gonna get that two-tone loom. It's BGW9 and C3. on the Expedition looks great. And then it's just some super weak, not very potent C1 on the Hemi there that is just already pretty much gone. You know what, let me do this. Let me be nice. Let me hit it with a little bit of black light there so you can get a little bit more out of it. So as you can see, as I'm talking right now, I'm just looking at those indices slowly fading away into nothingness. One thing I will say for the Hamilton, I do like that they did loom that hand. It was actually quite a pleasant surprise to see that running seconds there. Now, one of the things I actually also like to do here is a low light transition. And you know what, that actually reminds me, I didn't even do my wrist shot yet. So we'll close it on the wrist, guys, but we'll get through this here. One of the things I like to do in the low light transition is to give you a little bit of a better idea of how the colors are going to render when you're not in full direct sunlight in the middle of a field or something like that, or out at a park, because you're normally going to be going in and out of office buildings, out of vehicles and whatnot, so you're going to be in less than optimal or direct sunlight. So it gives you a little bit of a better idea, especially with the color blue and the way cameras read it. You end up getting everything looks super, super bright. But in actuality, these are actually nice navy blues. I wouldn't call them midnight by any means, but they are actually really nice, wearable, versatile tones of blue that aren't going to read as extremely cartoonish. So let's go ahead and hit the lights back now. And you know what? Let's actually get this on wrist. Okay, guys, on the wrist, as you can see, it definitely has that very classic mid-sized feel, super lightweight, and I just love the bevels on here, that they just stand out and they catch the light. Very beautiful. Definitely something that would pair well for kind of EDC, you know, with your everyday carry. You put it next to a nice titanium frame lock. This could be part of a really cool titanium carry setup. Now, what I was mentioning before about the visual weight. Now, with these extra keepers here on the outside, it just elongates the watch a little bit, especially for me, because it does feel like a bit of a small watch on my 7¼ inch wrist. Even up close, it actually helps it still spread the weight. Normally, a wristy will look pretty huge because of the way that the lens is going to distort when you're actually looking up close, this close to the lens with the band. But here, because one, the blue band is going to keep holding that light a little bit better, especially the direct studio lights, and then you have these keepers pushing that. It makes it feel a little bit longer, and it centers it more on the wrist and feels a bit more center place there. And also the fact that this thing has some really short lug to lugs. I mean, 44mm lug to lug is actually quite small. As you can see there on the tail, guys, this has been modified. I did trim it because it just basically stuck out about this far. I couldn't, this is thick as well, so it's not like I could easily fold it to go back under. So I normally don't trim straps, but I decided to trim these, and I actually kept it with a little bit more of a squared look versus a perfectly round one, because trying to get it perfectly round is actually pretty tough. Two, you know, I think the squared off look tied in a bit more with the angular setup on this particular watch. Now it fits pretty perfectly, dials in. I love the way this thing fits. As far as model variants go, you're gonna have a carbon black version, you're gonna have a Venture Sandstorm, and which is basically a white dial, and then a jungle green, and then of course this is the navy blue. All those look really great. The white dial is actually quite interesting to me. I think I might be considering picking one up for my son, just because it's such a cool little piece, and I think the white dial would be really, really versatile for him and kind of fitting to whatever situation he's going to be in while he's wearing it. So I don't know if any of you guys have kids, but I think this actually, due to that really short lug to lug, could be a really fun kids watch. And then also it's very lightweight. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is you know, made for kids or anything, but it's just because of the size. And honestly, this is the way field watches are supposed to be. They're not supposed to be this big clunky things. These aren't pilot's watches, right? You don't need that huge ultimate legibility. You're going to want something that, one, is going to be something you can just kind of forget on your wrist and only give you what you need when you need it. God, I mean, some of the watches I wore while I was active duty Marine Corps were just really small. Especially, I had these really small Timexes, probably maybe 35, 36 millimeters tops. Could have been 34s. Speaking of 34 millimeters, this is actually quite comparable to a very nice 34 millimeter watch made by Marathon. Their GPM, which is their general purpose mechanical, has the same movement, whatnot, and it actually costs a bit more than this, and it doesn't have the same level of water resistance, doesn't have the really cool use of titanium. It's actually a resin case. And then, of course, you can think about another comparable model would be the Hamilton Khaki range, like we showed earlier, especially the 38 millimeter models. Being quite comparable, but none of them are going to have this level of water resistance, as well as just, you know, I think a little bit more originality and a take that really makes it a little bit more fun and more unique. This is definitely not a reissue of any kind. This is something that just has a really cool, fun, kind of modern vibe to it, while still remaining true to a very simple formula. Now, as far as the bottom line on this one goes, guys, I guess this might even be the best new dedicated field watch out there, and I will call it dedicated field watch because, you know, although it is very capable as far as its water resistance goes, you know, I don't think this is trying to be super versatile and be something you can dress up. It's definitely meant to be a sports field watch. And of course, this is a little bit more of a fun, versatile color as far as that goes. But I mean, you put it on black, it's definitely a lot more business. The green, of course, too. I think the blue gives a little more versatility. The white is probably going to be also super versatile because you can dress that down a bit. But you could dress it up, maybe put it on a leather. But that matte case at the end of the day is going to keep it rather, you know, on the sporty side. But as you can see, this thing wears, even with the extra thickness here that lifts it off of your wrist, it still wears insanely well. And it, you know, it's just, there's so much good things going on with this watch. So many things to appreciate. The angles. Man, I'm loving this one, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.